Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Next Game, New Game podcast. Matt Catrillo back here with you as we get set to recap the 2019 NFL Draft, which was an absolute crazy one. It basically lived up to the hype for the most part. Maybe not as much activity as we thought we would see in the first round, but still a lot of big storylines to talk about. And joining me once again is SteelersDepot.com's Alex Kozora. Alex, welcome back, and what a draft.
Hey, Catrillo, good to be back. Yeah, you're probably right that there wasn't as many trades that we expected, especially in the top 10. Steelers were ironically, of all teams, Pittsburgh was the first team to make a move at 10 to go from 20 to 10, which we'll get into in a little bit. But yeah, really crazy stuff in Oakland, man. I mean, I think Oakland was one of those teams that was going to control the draft, and not to get in the weeds right away, but they certainly probably had the first big surprise of the whole thing.
Yeah, they definitely did. That was the first big curveball, and all the quarterbacks, really not a whole lot of big hype there other than what Daniel Jones going to the New York Giants at number 6, which we will get into that itself separately. But let's start with this. Let's start with the Pennsylvania teams 1st out. Start with the Steelers. They make the big move that we heard the rumors as we were going through the week for our show leading up to the draft last Thursday night. And they trade up. They get Devin Bush. They get their man at number 10. They trade up 10 spots. And something that we haven't really seen the Steelers do a whole lot is be that aggressive and move up to get their guy. But it's a move that they needed to make. Alex and I, you and I wanted to see that happen. I especially wanted to see it for a linebacker, and that's exactly who they get. Essentially, most likely Ryan Shazier's replacement at inside linebacker. But this is a guy in Devin Bush that's going to be a heck of a football player, I think. You talk about closing speed this guy has, the ability to tackle, can play some coverage too, I think. So I think the Steelers really got off to a really good start with the draft with the way they made that move in the first round.
They did. It was perfect. They had to get their guy. You had to get a 3-down linebacker. There's such a priority in the NFL today on speed, athleticism, coverage ability, to be so scheme versatile that teams can't exploit you. And there's no scheme that Devin Bush can't fit into. You're right. He's aggressive against the run. He takes good angles. He plays it inside out. He's got hit power. I love the way that he finishes plays. He can cover. He can go backwards. He can get depth in zone coverage. He can run with running backs in man coverage. He can blitz too. Blitzing is really important for Steelers off-ball linebackers. So we'll see exactly how he fits year one. I'm sure he's going to get playing time. I'm not going to guarantee he's going to start day one, but he's going to be an impact player, and you hopefully for a really long time. So to get him to be aggressive, they've only done that. It's only now the third trade up in the first round Kevin Colbert's ever done. Troy and Santonio Holmes with the other two. So hopefully history repeats itself here. But yeah, that was their guy. The trade made sense in terms of what they gave up, and had they not gotten Devin Bush, the drop off from the two Devons to the next group of off-ball linebackers was so steep that it really, I think, compelled the team to move up. I mean, you look at it this way. After the Steelers drafted Devin Bush at 10, from pick number 11 to pick 71, only one off-the-ball linebacker was selected, and that was Talani by Detroit at 43, which was pretty much a surprise. So just kind of told you how top-heavy the class was, and if you didn't get those guys, you were going to be in a really tough spot.
Right, definitely. And we look at some of the other picks for the Steelers and what they made. Coming up, you obviously had Devin Bush, number 10 overall. Then we go to
Diontae Johnson,
number 3, wide receiver from Toledo. And I thought that was an interesting pick. I know that the receivers went off the board pretty quickly. That was as we kind of anticipated after what we saw from the end of round 1 into round 2, and then that seemed like maybe the best available, but there's some things I know, Alex, that you're a little bit concerned about.
Well, I guess the initial shock with Johnson, it felt a bit of a reach, but I think the more that you listen to it and you hear it from the team perspective, that he was probably going to be a round 3 guy. To hear the Steelers say it, had the Steelers not taken Diontae Johnson at 66, he would have gone at pick 70 to Tampa Bay. The Bruce Arians called the Steelers and was mad at him for stealing Diontae Johnson from him. So I thought he was viewed as a mid day 3 pick, but I think probably in all actuality he was a round 2 guy, or day 2 guy, excuse me, round 3. But what you're getting with him is the versatility, and there's 2 words that this team's associated with Diontae Johnson: versatility and how natural he is in terms of his route running, ability to get separation, body control, run after catch, just overall produce big plays. That's what he does, and he fits that X-type profile really well. And of course, they're going to try to replace, Antonio Brown's spot, not just with Diontae Johnson, but with many people. But so you have the baseline traits needed to play that X receiver spot. But he's also versatile. He can play slot, he can play on the outside. He did kick and punt returns at Toledo and did both at a very high level. He's got 4 career return touchdowns, 2 on kicks, 2 on punts. And a guy that can be a bit of a gadget player too. This is a quarterback in high school. They tried to throw a pass at Toledo. He's run out of the backfield. He's been used on some, run plays and jet sweeps and things like that. So a guy that's going to be able to wear a lot of hats, and he may not put up spectacular numbers in any one area year one, but I think he's going to help you in a lot of ways. And I think, again, that versatility really helps that transition from playing in college to the NFL.
Right, and that seems to be something that Kevin Colbert likes in a player, especially when you're versatile as Deontay Johnson is. So perhaps that might have been something that been attractive for the Steelers to bring him in. But the other thing, the only big concern for me is would be his 4.53 40 time. A lot of people saying that he's quicker on the field than what the time suggests. I mean, sometimes you take some of these numbers from the combine with a grain of salt, but he's going to be interesting. One of the more interesting players, I think, Alex, to look for in Steelers camp, because you mentioned also how they can use him in gadget plays. Steelers really haven't done that a whole lot either. So if they draw stuff up for him, at least to experiment in the preseason, that'd be interesting to look at too.
Yeah, I mean, anything's possible. I'm not that I'm expecting them to really do it heavily or maybe at all, but I think I think it just speaks to his versatility that you can do a lot with him. You're right about the athletic profile. It's average to below, and that would be a cause for concern. But given the way the Steelers have scouted, receivers, you kind of hope you put some trust in them that they're evaluating it correctly. And hey, Juju ran 4.54, 4.57, and he's doing pretty well. So, take that 40 time with a grain of salt.
That's a fair point, valid point. So we'll see how that turns out. And as we go to day 3, obviously the pick that stands out to me, Alex, would be Benny Snell Jr., running back from Kentucky, going number 122 overall in the 4th round to the Steelers. And I thought that was a very interesting pick too. But I when you really look at it, though, I haven't really talked about running back. We've been focusing more when it comes to the Steelers' draft needs on the defensive side of the ball. Mm-hmm. But when you really think about it, past James Conner, there's really nothing there. So this is your definite a compliment back to James Conner. But again, we talked about some of the concerns that we had about Benny Snell getting ready for the draft. So we'll see how that turns out. But I think this may be a good situation for him with the Steelers here.
Yeah, it's a good situation. Now, I don't know if he's going to be the immediate backup to Connor. Jalen Samuels is still there, so I'm set Benny Snell as number 3 to start the year. But one injury, which is likely to happen, Connor's had injury problems his first 2 years, and just the nature of the position probably means that at some point this year, Snell's going to be the number 2 and log in some decent offensive snaps. But you talk about a type that a team has for a position. I don't think there's any clearer correlation than the Pittsburgh Steelers have in identifying running backs. If you're 225 pounds plus, you're a Pittsburgh Steelers running back. That's just the type of dude that they draft. They want guys with power. They want guys with production, high character, high energy, and Benny Snell has all that. This is a dude that broke every record at Kentucky, turned that program around from a basketball school only to a football program that won 10 games, beat Florida for the first time in 31 years, won the, Citrus Bowl to beat Penn State, where Snell broke a record. I mean, this dude had 48 career rushing touchdowns. That's 3rd most in SEC history. He did it only in 3 years, and that trails only Tim Tebow and Herschel Walker, so some really elite company to be in. But high character guy, durable, proven, productive. There is concerns about the long speed. He's not going to be a guy that busts off 70-plus yard touchdown runs, and there is a concern about, is he a little too redundant in that backfield, because he's got a similar skill set to James Conner. But no surprise at all that he was the pick, and I think will be a solid player that's well-rounded and with good pass protection, and I think better hands than people might expect.
And as we look the rest of day 3, Alex, and undrafted rookie free agents, I know this week is when guys will start officially signing with teams. Teams are making different roster moves to make sure they're at 90 as they head into the rookie camps this weekend. Anybody else stand out to you?
From late day 3 or the undrafted? Which one?
From all the above.
I like Isaiah Buggs in the 6th round. A guy that I think has some pass rush juice. 9.5 sacks last year for Bama, which actually was more than Quinnen Williams, which I know doesn't mean he's better than Quinnen Williams, but I think it's an interesting stat to throw out there. I think there's a little something there with Isaiah Buggs. Some of the other day 3 guys, productive players, athletic players, you're seeing the evolution of the game. Sutton Smith, the outside backer from Northern Illinois. Ulysses Gilbert III, the inside backer from Akron. Even Duran Gray, the 7th round pick, tackle from Maryland, I think is an interesting guy. The UDFA class is pretty underwhelming. It unfortunately has been for several years now in Pittsburgh. I would watch out for probably Fred Johnson, the guard tackle from Florida, a guy that's 6'7", 320 that can move a little bit. So that might be a sleeper to make the team.
All right, so let's go to the Eagles now. And obviously, when you look at the first round, they trade up 3 spots with the Ravens to get Andre Dillard, a tackle from Washington State. Really wasn't completely on my radar as far as Eagles and offensive line, because I was hoping when these Eagles traded up, it would be for maybe for a linebacker or maybe another position, maybe like I was thinking maybe a Marquise Brown, Holiday Brown from Oklahoma. But I'm okay with this pick. I should say I love this pick because now you've solidified Jason Peters' heir apparent afterwards. Once he retires, maybe, or you might even see him this year, as we talked about leading into the draft, Alex, where Jason Peters has been in that lineup really the last 2 years and obviously wasn't on the field when the Eagles won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. This is a guy that's obviously really, really solid in pass protection. I think, and this is one thing actually that Fran Duffy and the draft guys at PhiladelphiaEagles.com did a great job pointing out too. And actually, he did a thing with a video with Jeff Stalin, a breakdown with Jeff Stalin. I thought that was just tremendous video to watch. Go check it out, Eagles fans. If you haven't seen it now, you might like it too. And they broke down Dillard's footwork and his ability to kick slide. And I think it's really some of the best that I've seen in my short time and kind of doing this. And the way he just sticks with guys as the quarterback scrambles. But just overall, I think his ability to kick slide, and also that ability is there because his IQ is very high, and being able to read when double teams are coming, when you want to bounce guys to the guard next year, anything like that. He anticipates really well for an offensive lineman of what's coming at him. And I think that's really key, especially for a left tackle, 90% of the time blindside blocker, to know what's coming. You can really protect the quarterback well. I love that you have a lineman. You're getting a lineman that has a high IQ like that. So I really think that's a very, very solid pick. And as I said before to you, Alex, when we started the draft, that I think that this can be a guy, if they were to get a guy, an offensive tackle or whatever in the first round, it could be for the number 2 spot with Halapoulivaati Vaitai. And I think, no question, that could be the case for the Eagles next year. But obviously, he's your future left tackle regardless of whatever happens this upcoming season.
How about that? Both Pennsylvania teams trading up in the first round. Now, Pittsburgh obviously made the bigger move, but I thought Philadelphia made a really calculated move because he wasn't getting to Philly if they stayed at, what was that, 25 you guys originally had?
Yeah, we were 25, and it looks like he may have gone to the Texans at 20.
He absolutely would have gone to the Houston Texans. And you kind of saw, in my opinion, them panic a little bit because they lost Dillard, a pick ahead of him, and they had to take the next tackle, which I think most people considered was a reach, and Titus Howard, who might be a good play from Alabama State, but probably, was not going to be the guy at 23, not really viewed as someone that high, kind of an early day 2 type of player. But yeah, I think PFF had the stat that there was nobody in this draft class that had more, pass protection reps and kick slide reps than Andre Dillard. And that's not a surprise coming out of Washington State and playing in the air raid. So pass protection, there's little concern about. Now, there is some concern about, him playing with closer splits and his run blocking and maybe some transition to do there. But I think he had overall a good week at the Senior Bowl. I think that gave teams confidence. And you talk about a blindside protector and someone that's going to be, and even if he does play on the right side for some reason, not that we really anticipate him to, but let's say hypothetically that Lane Johnson gets moved to left tackle and they want Dillard on the right side. Probably not going to happen, but
yeah, I definitely don't see that happening now.
But even if it were, I mean, left tackle or right tackle, you got great pass rushers on both sides, so you need good pass protectors, whether you're left side or right side. It doesn't matter. These guys will be so flexible, and these guys move around so much that it's not left tackle is the pass protector, the right tackle is the run blocker, like it was maybe 25 years ago. So now that you'll have, in the future, post Jason Peters, you'll have Andre Dillard and Lane Johnson, 2 excellent pass protectors, 2 mobile guys. You're going to be set, and Carson Wentz is going to be a very happy man because of it.
Yeah, clearly, when you look at this Eagles draft, as we continue to go down the board here and what they did in day 2 and day 3, this was clearly all about Carson Wentz because, A, they know that the critics are out there that the guy can't stay healthy. We got rid of Nick Foles. Some people still saying, why did you get rid of Nick Foles? And this is a big year for him. You have the big contract that's looming for the Eagles. I know they just extended Carson Wentz. They took the 5th-year option to give him a little bit more time, to give the team more time to give that contract. But all that's looming. So Howie Roseman and Joe Douglas and everybody in that Eagles draft blast clearly realized they needed to make sure Carson, 1, is upright, and 2, gets more weapons than what he had last year, especially at running back. They did that with Miles Sanders. And I actually like this pick a lot too. I know this is going to crowd up the running back room. I know, Alex, I was basically gushing for Josh Jacobs, and I know he was there on the board at the time. Or I'm sorry, he was already gone off the board with Oakland taking him there in the late 20s there. But I think this is going to be another good solid back. I think he's going to fit with what the Eagles do. It seems to me when they made this pick that they still kind of want to stick with the running back by committee type of approach, which obviously worked for them when they won the Super Bowl a couple years ago. And Sanders can do that. I know there's some concerns about his pass catching ability out of the backfield. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But you talk about a guy that can accelerate, that can run in between the tackles, that can make guys miss and open in the open field. I mean, this is really going to be solid with what you're coming back. You have Corey Clement coming off an ACL, and I think to me he's going to be your third down back, and a guy that can probably catch the ball the best out of the backfield. Who knows if you get Darren Sproles back? And then the competition now is going to be between Wendell Smallwood and Josh Adams if the Eagles were to keep 4 running backs, which I still see them doing. That's what they did last year, and considering where they're at as far as the roster numbers go, I think you can see that this year. All of that's leading up to the beginning of the regular season. So I like that. And then J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, wide receiver from Stanford. I like this. I like this pick too. It's another big body to go opposite of Alshon Jeffrey. Guy that'll stay in the outside. I wasn't happy with it at first because I wasn't sure how that was going to be without Nelson Aguilar's future. But clearly, after what Howie Roseman talked about in the media, they want to keep him here at least for another season, even though they have a lot of money attached to that position. So it's another guy that's another big body. I think he's 6'3"-ish, somewhere around there, and he's a guy that can go and get the jump ball. So the Eagles' red zone offense, it wasn't great last year. It was obviously solid when they won the Super Bowl. I think it can get back to that caliber again with another guy like this at the receiving core.
I like both picks. I mean, Sanders was productive in his 1 year taking over for Saquon Barkley, had a really good combine. I think that helped solidify him into that, because it was such a muddy tier behind Josh Jacobs, who was going to be the next running back off the board. And I think that really good combine workout Sanders had running 4.49 at his size really elevated him. The concern I have with Sanders, though, is not so much the pass protection or the hand, it's the fumbling. I think he fumbled more than any other back in this class.
Concern, yep.
Anytime I watched his tape, watching him or watching somebody else, I saw him put the ball on the ground. So that's a concern there because that's the quickest way to the bench. You fumble. I don't care what you ran. I don't care how productive you are, how many tackles you break. You put the ball on the ground, you're not playing. So that's going to be the issue for Miles Sanders. Have to clean up that ball security. But I like the Arcega-Whiteside pick. Just a big power forward. Guy played basketball in high school. Probably could have played basketball in college if he wanted to and played at a high level. And going to be just that athletic who ran 4.49. He ran really well. He's not just a big, slow dude that can win contested catches. And you made a good point about the red zone offense. 2017, you were second in red zone offense. Last year, 17th. So, that's a guy that's going to help probably solve some of those problems. You got him with the tight ends you have. I think the red zone offense is going to creep back into the top 10.
Yeah, and I even said this before the draft, Alex, the way the Eagles roster was going into the draft, I thought this could be the offense that can get back to scoring 30 points a game like it did in 2017. And I definitely think that solidified itself now with the way they've solidified the skill positions and also the way they solidified the offensive line with Andre Dillard at number 22. Because when you add in Jordan Howard into the mix too, you have Howard and Sanders, guys that can you can ground and pound with, can go up the middle, but can still have the ability to make guys miss. Then you have a guy like Corey Clement that can catch the ball out of the backfield. And if you keep Darren Sproles, and that's just another bonus you would think, considering how well he played last year, considering his age. But even so, even if you keep a guy like Smallwood or Josh Adams, I think the Eagles really are a much better spot now at running back. And then looking at day 3, of course, they do take a quarterback, Clayton Thorson, quarterback from Northwestern. Looks like this kid is very, very raw. Didn't really have great numbers overall at Northwestern, especially last year. But obviously, he'll be the third-string quarterback. We kind of knew that the Eagles were going to take somebody probably in day 3 to get another QB on the roster, only 2 with Wentz and Nate Sudfeld. So that is what it is there. We'll see how things go with that. But once again, Alex, the Eagles have intrigued me with their signing of undrafted rookie free agents. And you look at it, perfect example, Corey Clement and the way he performed in the Super Bowl and the way he's been with the Eagles since the Eagles signed him. And they really, I think this is a big credit to Andy Weidel and Joe Douglas and the rest of the Eagles draft scouts and that entire personnel staff. And I think it's another solid group overall. 2 guys that intrigue me the most, obviously DeAndre Tompkins from Penn State. I mean, I think that goes without saying. More speed. Talk about that with the size. Now you get more speed on the outside. Maybe you can put him in the slot too. We'll see. I'm really curious to see how he plays in the preseason and here in the spring. And then Jamalcolm Liggins he's a quarterback from Dickinson State. This is a great story. Only exposure was competing at North Dakota State's Pro Day. Ironically, of course, if Carson Wentz there. So and he's got an interesting family background too. This is going to be really a good name to keep an eye on through camp to see if he can somehow make the team. And the Eagles actually signed 4 guys from Penn State overall. Yeah, Ryan Banter for the one of the offensive linemen from last year also signed. So this is once again, I think the Eagles did a nice job with the undrafted rookie free agents again.
Yeah, with Thornton, I wouldn't call him raw. I mean, this guy started, I think, basically all 4 years with the Wildcats, and I think he threw 1,700 pass attempts, so he's on like a 1 year starter kind of guy. The thing with him, tough guy, made some big plays there, but ton of turnovers, ton of interceptions, and that's going to be the issue with him. He's got to clean up. But you're right, I do like the undrafted class. I'll throw a different name at you. Keegan Render from Iowa, the center, was a guy I really had an eye on coming into the draft, and a guy that was a leader, really well respected in that locker room. And someone that might kind of remind me a bit of Jason Kelce.
Yeah, and that's someone that they're gonna have to replace eventually too. I know Jason Kelce had just was actually on 97.5 The Fanatic in Philly the other day. He mentioned his body's as healthy as it can be for his age, and he's been relatively healthy the last couple of seasons. He got nicked up here and there towards the end of last year, but you have to start considering that too because you really don't have anybody I think that can be at the center spot. To me, I haven't really seen a lot from Isaac Seumalo yet either. So maybe this kid can really make a name for himself coming up in camp. So I like overall. I give the Eagles a B plus for the draft, and I think that's a good start again to the offseason for the Eagles. So let's go now, Alex, to the rest of the NFL. Let's go back to the Raiders because I know you alluded to that when we first started the show. Clelin Ferrell, that was the first big surprise, taking him number 4 overall, the defensive end from Clemson. What'd you think?
It was a surprise. Now, I like Clelin Ferrell. I'm a big fan. Had he been, I was talking about him potentially being the pick at 20. I mean, and I understand why the Raiders took him. He's high character, highly productive. I think he's an advanced pass rusher at this point. He's not just a speed, win the edge guy. That's not really his game, matter of fact. But he's got great hand use. He wins in multiple ways. It comes from a military family, a big family. And as Mike Mayock talked about it, whenever he went to anyone on that Clemson team and said, who was the leader on the defensive side of the football, they all said Clelin Ferrell. And that's not a surprise at all, the way he carries himself and the production that he has. So it was a surprise. I don't think he's going to be that super high ceiling, 12, 15 sack kind of guy. But I think he's going to be maybe sort of like a Ryan Kerrigan type of player where you're going to consistently have 7 to touching double-digit sacks every year.
Right. And I think when Mike Mayock, of course, has been close to the AFC East. I think seeing that maybe that could have been that's a good point, but I haven't seen much of Ferrell's tape. I was just surprised by the fact that that's where he was kind of projected to go, was in like the late first round there. And I'm not going to be the one to question Mike Mayock yet, at least. But I think if you're Mayock, you have to hope and pray this kid A, stays healthy, but B, is productive a little bit early. And I think, Alex, that's a good reaching point for him to be kind of around somewhere from the 7 to 10 sack range for a first year, for someone to consider that to be actually a good choice at number 4.
I still think they should have traded back. I mean, I know that Mayock said they didn't get any calls. You call somebody. I mean, you can go back to 6 or 7. You got Josh Allen sitting there. You got Devin White sitting there. You got Hawkinson. You got Ed Oliver. Somebody was going to come up, and you could have easily gotten Ferrell and picked up maybe a 3rd or 4th round pick in the process. That was the biggest mistake, I thought, by taking Clelin Ferrell at 4.
Yeah, and that's fair because I would think similar too. But I think it also just goes to show you, Alex, which was to me the biggest surprise of especially the first round, was the amount of teams that really did not want to trade up, other than really the Eagles and the Steelers. And the Steelers only moved up, or was the biggest jump at 10 spots. Eagles only moved up really 3 spots, which you tend to see at that point of the first round. I was surprised nobody really was thinking about moving up into beyond the top 10 where the Steelers were. So I thought that was a little bit surprising there about the first round. But other than that, I obviously like Josh Jacobs at 24 for the Raiders. I don't know if anybody else stands out to you at all, or how the first round went in terms of teams trading up and down.
Well, to go to Oakland to finish them, I think maybe my second favorite pick behind Ferrell was Jonathan Abram. I mean, I love this guy. And people question maybe his coverage skills, but I mean, this dude's a football player that's going to help set the tone for that defense. There wasn't a more physical safety in this draft, and there were a lot of them, but there was no one more physical than Jonathan Abram. So that's just one of those dudes that's going to just kind of set the tone game by game. And I know they have Carl Joseph there, but his future long-term beyond this year is probably in doubt with Mayock and a new regime coming in. But I really like Jonathan Abram. So yeah, the other picks, I mean, I thought Buffalo getting Ed Oliver at 9 was excellent value. The Lions getting Hawkinson at 8. How about the Jags getting Josh Allen at number 7. I mean, those
Yeah,
are some really good
definitely.
picks there. The falling in their lap to Josh Allen. Everyone can rag on the Giants, and that's mostly fair. Obviously not
We'll
big.
get to that next.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll save that then. But what are the other picks that I want to talk about? I love Green Bay getting Darnell Savage Jr. at 21. I mean, you talk about as I mentioned earlier, the way the league is evolving with sub-package players and needing to wear multiple hats and kind of being scheme versatile. Darnell Savage Jr. probably fit that profile better than any safety, any DB in this draft. So I thought excellent job by Green Bay at 21. Jerry Tillery at 28 for the Chargers. Prototypical 5-tech, 4-high. Was hurt last year, had a torn labrum, but a really good player, and I think that could be excellent value for the Chargers at 28.
Yeah, I think it's a good point you made about Jacksonville, Alex. Because I immediately thought when he was in their lap, I thought Jacksonville was going to just let him slide because how much the amount of depth that they have at that position at linebacker. But they clearly saw he's the best player on the board, and that's exactly what they did. And that could be smart drafting on Jacksonville's part because you never know about injuries and things like that. But obviously, the talent's there for Josh Allen, so I thought that was a good move on Jacksonville's part. But we get to what the Giants did at number 6 with Daniel Jones, and obviously you and I basically ripped him apart when we did our draft show leading into it, Alex. And I'm still laughing at this pick for the Giants. I don't know what to see in this kid at number 6, especially at number 6. I mean, 17 is one thing, but at number 6, with the amount of players that were there on the board, like a Josh Allen, who I think the Giants could have used, I'm still scratching my head about this one. I really am.
No, I am too. I wouldn't have done it. Now, I do want to be careful that we don't overcorrect and bash it so much that we set the bar so low that Jones could because Jones could be a good player. I mean, there are things you like about Daniel Jones. You like the pocket presence, the poise, and I know it's lower down the list of concerns, but playing in New York and having all that media attention, you do need a guy with the mental toughness to endure that because there's going to be tough days. There's going to be, bad games and bad media reports. There's going to be a ton of criticism. So you do need somebody that I think has the mental toughness to either deal with that or just be able to have the strength to tune it out. So, the reasoning behind it that Gettleman said, watching him 3 senior series at the Senior Bowl, I mean, those things are abysmal. But I don't like the pick, but I don't want to rag on the pick so much that it becomes so easy for them to prove us wrong because Jones, could be a decent quarterback. He's going to come in a situation where he can sit for a year, 2, potentially even 3, according to Gettleman, and that's conducive, generally speaking, to success for rookie quarterbacks or for quarterbacks in general. So, I didn't like the pick. I'm not surprised by it. One bet I had in my mock draft, the Giants taking Daniel Jones at 6, but I do want to say that I could be wrong about that, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the case. It kind of always seems to be that way, but I think we'll spend time rehashing what he can and can't do, but. I just think, and you made a couple of good, fair points about where this stands for the Giants going forward here, but I just don't like the way Dave Gettleman has defended himself.
Sure.
I don't think he's really, I just don't think he's really helped himself in any regard of talking about the 3 years down the road, which I actually think he might need. But then why do you pick him at 6? I just don't think he's really helped himself. Therefore, help this kid kind of make this transition right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the reasoning was poor. Again, the transition, him getting the sit will be big. I mean, that's a positive thing, so that's not bad. And so it's going to take some time for us to really know if it was a good pick or not. It's going to probably take 2 to 4 years, but I think situationally wise, it's not the worst because he can come in and sit and learn. That's important.
And the only thing I will say, Alex, that I think is clear now. I mean, if it wasn't really clear to begin with coming into the draft, is the Giants, I think, still view Eli Manning as their quarterback for another 2 to 3 years, and Eli is going to be 37, I believe, coming into this season, which would spell the turnover to Daniel Jones eventually. So, if they had this kid in mind from the get-go, from towards the end of last season, and Pat Shurmur firmly said many times in front of the media towards the end of last season, Eli's my guy next year, then I think you can kind of connect the dots maybe a little bit, but still, I still think this is still a good pick. So we'll have to see how that goes there.
My last quick thought with the Giants is I almost dislike the next pick they make more than what they did at 6 with Dexter Lawrence at 17. Now I like Lawrence, and I think he actually might be a better player than Daniel Jones, but in terms of value, kind of a clogging interior defensive lineman, that's not what I'm doing in the first round. I'm taking pass rushers. I'm taking defensive line in the first round. So that's an issue there. And they had Snacks Harrison. They traded him away. So just they're getting a similar player in Lawrence that they had with Snacks, but why trade away Snacks in the first place, and why take run stuffers in the first round and in the top 20 at that?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point there, but I do think Dexter Lawrence can have a pass rushing ability from the inside, which I think the Giants know was key for them during their 2 Super Bowl runs. But again, yeah, you had a guy in Snacks Harrison, and you trade him away and this and that. So yeah, I get both sides of that argument too, but I think it was a bad pick at 17. But obviously, when you look at the track record and what else they did, because then they traded back in to get a quarterback late in the first round too. So it was kind of all over the place for me for the Giants overall in that draft class. Staying with the NFC East, Redskins, I thought they were going to make the big splash. They didn't. They ended up getting their guy at 15 with Dwayne Haskins. And then they get Montez Sweat at 22, and I thought that was a good pick for them. That's something that's definitely going to be needed, and looks like Sweat's going to be good to go on the medical side. And then they get their quarterback at Dwayne Haskins, so we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, I didn't mind the draft. To get Haskins at 15, again, falling in their lap was great, not having to trade up for him. I might not be the biggest Haskins fan, but it's hard to really complain about that. Sweat, again, I'm not the biggest fan of, but I thought the value overall with Haskins and Sweat at 15 and 26 were excellent. And as you said, if they're comfortable with the medical and that's all fine. Maurice Hurst last year fell to Oakland in the 5th round and had the big medical concerns, but played really well, and that's probably going to end up being a steal for the Raiders. So I'm happy with all that. They didn't do a whole lot in the rest of the draft. They didn't pick again until 76. I do like Terry McLaurin at Ohio State, speed guy, gunner, good special teams value. Bryce Love at the 4th, though, I thought was too high. They got a lot of injury history in that backfield, unfortunately.
Yeah, I didn't quite get the Bryce Love pick, considering, yes, the injuries, but then, too, I mean, I just don't see how that's going to really play out. What does this do to Darius Geis? And apparently he put out something like one of those confused emojis on Twitter afterwards, which wasn't smart on his personal part, but at the same time, I was kind of scratching my head too for the Redskins. So you're trying to stay young, but at the same time, you pick a guy that has another injury. So I didn't really understand that there at running back. But this is the Redskins. You never know what happens. But I think if you're a Redskins fan, I think you just have to be happy knowing that you didn't give up multiple first-round picks yet again for a questionable quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. They made some good day 3 selections, though. Wes Martin from Indiana was a small school. Well, I shouldn't say small school, but a sleeper that kind of rose real late in the process. One of the strongest linemen, just pound for pound in this draft. And Kelvin Hardman at 206. I'm not a huge fan of Hardman's game, but to get him in the 6th round, I thought was a steal.
And now going to around the NFL, continuing here, Alex. I just want to go touch on one other thing with Kyler Murray. Of course, he goes number 1 overall to the Cardinals. Was no surprise there. I thought he handled himself well in that press conference the day after, and as far as answering questions about Josh Rosen and things like that. I think his message is clear, and I think that's going to be a good thing. But now we'll just see how things kind of come together with him and Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona.
Yeah, now that press conference that Murray gave, that was still with Rosen on the team, right? That was before they traded him on day 2.
Before the trade, yeah.
Yeah, so obviously now it's just Murray. Had Rosen stayed, I mean, that would have been a whole different can of worms. Yeah, it was the pick that we figured all along, and a guy that's going to mesh really well with Kingsbury. And yes, there's height concerns, but this guy's overcome it at every level, and one of the most unique athletes this draft has seen in quite some time.
And I thought Rosen too made a smart move in putting that video out after the trade went through, and we'll see what happens now with Miami too. But I thought he made a smart move there, putting out that video. I thought it was really well said on his part.
Yeah, I think it was good for the team to move on from him, and good for him to move on from the team. Now he's going to Miami, which is in the middle of a big rebuild too, and you worry about some of the similar ills that Arizona had, he's going to experience in Miami. That offensive line is in pretty poor shape, and who are your receivers? And, Mike Gesicki's going to have a big second year to kind of help out Josh Rosen. But I think obviously a new organization was probably the best thing for Josh Rosen.
And clearly, to me, I think has the end. I know they have Ryan Fitzpatrick there. I know the guy can start at in spurts. Not going to be a good consistent quarterback in this league, but I think if you're Miami, if you're playing Ryan Fitzpatrick at any point during the season, you got some issues.
How many games does Rosen start this year?
I'm going to say he starts at least 10.
Okay, I was going to go high. I was going to say 12. I think Fitzpatrick does his 1 month shuffle that he likes to do, and then have a 4 interception game and get benched and it's Rosen the rest of the way.
I mean, if you're I know they're going to compete, but if I'm a Miami fan, I don't want to see Fitzpatrick start week 1. I just don't think
I
we're
think
gonna
I think he's
be-
gonna. I think he will start week 1, and I think that's fine because I think Rosen does need some time to sit and get. He's going to a new system, new scheme, and they brought Fitzpatrick in for a reason, and that's probably going to be to start.
Yeah, I get that, but I don't want to. I've had enough of Fitzpatrick already. Enough with him already. But we'll see how that plays out with Miami. Going to the rest of the draft, I want to go to Baltimore, Alex, because I know I know you've said it clearly before that they've had a very good draft, and I agree. Obviously, they had Holiday Brown on the outside to get some speed there, upgrade that receiver core that they have there. And then they also draft Trace McSorley, of course, the quarterback from Penn State. We'll see how that goes. Maybe they get him involved in the offense in a wildcat type of fashion. What did you think of Baltimore's draft?
I liked it. You got speed, you got athleticism, you got playmakers downfield. You draft Hollywood Brown in the first round, and teams to stop Baltimore are going to have to put 8 in the box. They're going to have to load up to stop the run, and now that's going to mean that Hollywood Brown is going to be one-on-one with a cornerback, and this dude can absolutely fly, and that's going to create some big play opportunities. So that's going to be a new element for this offense. Especially after losing John Brown to Buffalo in the offseason. Then Miles Boykin in the third. I love Miles Boykin. And this is a guy that probably help mask some of Lamar Jackson's accuracy concerns, him being inaccurate sometimes because this dude's 6'3" with a great catch radius that caught every bad ball they threw at him at Notre Dame. And they threw a ton of bad balls at him at Notre Dame with some really poor quarterback play up in ND. So you get them, you get Justice Hill, again, another playmaker, versatile guy. I didn't love all their picks. Jalen Ferguson feels like another one of the big kind of lumbering pass rushers that has a middling to meh type career like Courtney Upshaw did. But I thought in terms of offensively, they got some real big playmakers for this offense, and they needed it.
Yeah, I think clearly, I think the Ravens had a similar approach to the Eagles in terms of making sure they filled this draft with weapons for their quarterback in Lamar Jackson. And they clearly have done that, especially what they like to do with Lamar Jackson in the pocket and out of the pocket and with the zone read and things like that. And you mentioned, I loved Miles Boykin at ND. He was a couple of few bright spots for the offense for ND in his time there. So they get for that receiving core, you get speed and you get some height on the outside, and I think that definitely helps the Ravens. But just going forward, Alex, and I know we'll get into this down the line here, but I'm still am not fully believing in the Ravens because I just don't believe in Lamar Jackson as a quarterback in this league. I think you saw the exposure in the playoff loss to the Chargers at home, what the Chargers did to him. I think this is a guy that's still limited. Yes, he's got some weapons now. Perhaps that helps with the way you just described how teams are going to have to play the Ravens a little bit now with the advantage they got on the outside. But your quarterback still has to make some plays for you, still take care of himself, take care of the football. I don't see that from Lamar Jackson still.
I mean, we'll see. Obviously, no one can really say for sure, but last year was such a weird situation, being used as a gadget player the first half of the year, and you're focused on that, not focused quite on playing as quarterback. And there's accuracy concerns. You got to be a more consistent player, but I see a guy that can make those big plays. And you put him in a scramble drill with all the tight ends they have, and Boykin and Justice Hill and Hollywood Brown. I mean, they're going to make some big plays. They don't need Lamar Jackson to carry this team, but he can be a really good complement piece that is going to make 2 to 3 wow plays per game. That's probably going to win them several of those games this year.
As we start to wrap things up, Alex, anything else stand out to you from the draft overall?
I guess probably just stick in the first round. Things I didn't like in the first round, I want to try to go through. Again, I didn't love the Dexter Lawrence pick at 17. LJ Collier at Seattle at 29. And Seattle does some weird stuff in the first round. Penny last year, Collier this year. Again, Titus Howard at 23 wasn't crazy, but I thought the Titans had, they could have potentially a top 5 player in Jeffrey Simmons. If he plays this year, and to get him at 19 is a pretty rare circumstance, but we're aware of all the reasons why Simmons fell the way that he did. And then we'll see what happens, early round 2. And Jawan Taylor, Jacksonville could have a couple steals here with Josh Allen falling, then Jawan Taylor falling potentially with a knee concern. But if he's healthy, that's going to be a great pick. I loved the way he dominated Brian Burns at Florida State. Really kind of sold me on Jawan Taylor. Then my favorite player in this draft, Deebo Samuel. San Francisco's getting some just electric guys that can wear a lot of hats. Deebo Samuel, Jalen Hurd, Kyle Shanahan's going to have a lot of fun on the West Coast.
Couple of names I'll throw out in teams. I'm going to start with Denver. I think them getting the tight end Noah Fant from Iowa, I think gives another big weapon for Joe Flacco or whoever starts in Denver, because obviously they also drafted Drew Lock early in the second round, which actually Denver traded up for, which I thought was interesting. So I think the quarterback picture is still a little bit unclear in Denver right now, so I'm curious to see how that plays out. But at least you get a guy and Noah Fant you can go to as a good tight end to go to. Then I go to Carolina, and I thought they made an interesting pick with Will Grier from West Virginia, the quarterback in the 3rd round. Is that going to be the future quarterback from Cam Newton? So I just thought that was a little bit interesting too. And then with Cincinnati, getting Jonah Williams I thought was huge for Andy Dalton going forward, but I still don't like Andy Dalton as a quarterback. I think Cincinnati's going to have to eventually address that. But those are a couple of things that stood out to me from the 1st round too.
I thought the team that probably had the worst draft, and I know these things are meaningless, but we're having the conversation, is Houston. I mentioned Titus Howard in the 2nd round. They got two picks, 54, 55. They have still some really good talent there. Lonnie Johnson, who I know has some upside as a long corner, but I think he's way too stiff. He didn't have great production at Kentucky. Didn't like that pick. And then Max Sharping, the double dip, the offensive line. I'm just not a fan of Max Sharping, not a fan of his body type. I don't know what he does super well. I think the coaches do like him probably more than scouts, but I just, I know they're trying to protect that offensive line, which they need to. It's long overdue, but to get Howard and Sharping and then a corner that I think has a lot of stiffness, not a fan.
All right, so that is our look at the 2019 NFL Draft in the books. Next year we go to Vegas, and I'm sure that's going to be an interesting scene there for sure. So, Alex, it was good catching up with you here, and we'll look forward to rookie camp coming up this weekend, and, of course, mini camp, and then we'll get towards the training camp, too.
Yeah, can't wait.
And, of course, you can follow the podcast on Twitter at NG_NFL. Alex is on Twitter at Alex_Kozora, and I am on Twitter at MControllo. And this will probably be likely the last time we will talk to you guys before we hit training camp. Once we get into training camp and once we start the preseason, then, of course, we'll be back in pretty much full swing after that. But, of course, if anything major pops up, we'll be sure to come back on here and break it down for you right here in the Next Game, New Game podcast. But for now, for Alex Kozora, I'm Matt Controllo. This has been the Next Game, New Game podcast.